once, but many times. So, but also there is like a risk that happens sometimes, that somebody start to read too much, and then start to learn too much, and then search some pratistas, some proud in that knowledge, and then that causes some problems. So my question is, how we check ourselves when we reading books for the instruction from our guru, but also we have to learn how to use that knowledge, how to don't use it for in the wrong way, like to get appreciation from other people. Oh, you know so many mantras, or you know so many things, but then I get some be proud of that, and then it causes me another problem. So I see that happens sometimes in the bodies, that we need to read the scriptures, we need to know about this, discuss each other, but we have to be careful also how we use it. So maybe you can talk a little about that. You can give us some instructions.
Yeah, very nice question, Prabhu. And Nahush, I saw that you raised your hand, so we'll remember that, and we'll get back to your question too. So very nice topic suggested by Rasaraj Prabhu. Because as Prabhu said, we are recommended to read the books, but at the same time, how do we avoid going in the direction of gyan? We can say the spirit, too much in the spirit of collecting knowledge and boosting our own ego, as a result of that. And I think with everything is about the proper measure, right? If you're cooking and you put too much salt, you'll spoil it. If you put too little salt, then it's also no good. Everything has to be just so, right? It has to be just the precise degree, and precise amount. It is like that with everything. And I've been getting into cooking lately, so I usually cook for the programs here. So I've been thinking about that a lot, how it's everything is a science, when you're, the way that the temperature of the oil, if you're roasting the vegetables, and what type of pot you're using, and so many details, So spiritual life, is also a science, and we have to understand the right degree, in everything. Ultimately, it depends on mercy, right? That is the final ingredient, which doesn't depend on us. But to maximize, our chances of receiving that mercy, and also to reciprocate with the mercy that we are receiving, properly, then we need to proceed in the proper way. So this issue with reading, this is a big topic, actually. There are many things I'd like to say on that. The first, when you asked your question, the first thing that came to my mind is this famous Bhagavad. Sorry, not Bhagavad. Well, that Bhagavad Gita verse is also relevant, but what I was thinking of was Srila Rupa Goswami's verse. Atashi Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Rajam Indriyai Sevan Muke Hi Jiva Dao Swayame Vasporcha Dao. And this is the main answer, that everything about Krishna, it is beyond the purview of our senses. His name, form, qualities, pastimes, they are beyond the reach of our intellect. Our sight, our touch, taste, everything is beyond us. So what is the answer? Sevan muke hi jiva dao. Swayameva, that if we have sevan mukata means serving temperament, serving attitude, the attitude of service, the posture of service, then that, that name, the Lord, he may be pleased to descend and to reveal himself. So this is the crux of the matter. This is the main point. Here's Rukmini also joining us. Welcome, Rukmini. Dhanyavad.
Dhanyavad, Vishaka.
So this is the main point, How do we approach all of these things with the attitude of service? Because Krishna consciousness is only real, our practice is only real when it is based on that mood of service, of self-giving. Otherwise, what we're doing in the name of devotion, it can be an exercise of the mind or senses, right? This is the problem. And in the name of watering the seed of devotion, we may actually be watering the weeds. This is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that we may be doing so many practices, but we're actually just supporting the weeds that are growing, and they're obstructing the growth of our devotional creeper. So it is a tricky thing. And in regards to reading, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, this is a very interesting point. Srila Sridhar Maharaj actually did not allow the devotees to read independently, in the mat, Of course, that's not something that we necessarily apply in our own lives, because we're not living, in Srila Sridhar Maharaj's mat, full-time 24-hour seva. It's a different, everything changes according to time, place, and circumstance. But let's talk about this first in terms of the principle. Let's establish the principle first. Then we can see how we apply, right, in individual situations. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he actually did not allow devotees to read independently. His system was that they would have 3 classes a day, actually. The Navadvip schedule, there was a morning, let me think now. There was morning Chaitanya Bhagavat. There would be an afternoon Srimad Bhagavatam class. And then there would be an evening Chaitanya Charitamrita class. That was the mat schedule, up until, the time I was there, after Srila Sridhar Maharaj had left. That was the mat schedule, So Srila Sridhar Maharaj's vision and how he ran things on the mat is that devotees would attend, these designated classes. And then the rest of the day, they would be busy doing their service, Because the point is that when we are reading, it should be in the mood of some reading or hearing, it should be in the mood of receiving something that's descending, right? It shouldn't be like, I am going to grasp something, but so it's a completely different thing, like choosing a book, right? Picking up a book, choosing a book and reading it independently, and then going and sitting in a regular class and hearing like what the qualified speakers inspired, to read or discuss. These are 2 different things, right? One is more in the posture of an assertion, right? An individual assertion. And the other is in a posture of receiving, something's coming down and we are receiving in a surrendered mood. So that was how Srila Sridhar Maharaj actually ran the mat. And Shripad Bhakti Prapanid Tirtha Maharaj, many of you know him, he told me personally of one experience he had. I've told this story many times, so I'm sorry if some of you are hearing it for the 10th time. But he told me personally how one day he was sitting in his room reading a book of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj it seems like he would sometimes send someone out to do a spot check on what everyone was doing. He'd send one of his secretaries out to do a random check on what everyone's doing. So he sent Gaur Krishna Prabhu was one of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's assistants at the time. And he sent Gaur Krishna like to check what every devotee in the mat was doing. And so Tirtha Maharaj is sitting in his room reading this book of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He gets a knock on his door and Gaur Krishna is there. And, Guru Maharaj wants to know, what you're doing. Can you imagine that? Would we pass that test every time? I don't know about that. Just imagine how strict Srila Sridhar Maharaj was. Gurudev, he mentioned, that actually not many devotees could stay in Srila Sridhar Maharaj's mat because he was so strict. And Devashish Prabhu told me that once he said to Gurudev, kind of like nostalgically, oh, I wish I could have known Guru Maharaj as a young man. And Gurudev said, you wouldn't have been able to tolerate, like you knew Guru Maharaj in his later grandfather years when he was more gentle, but in his younger years, he was, very strict and very strong. You wouldn't have been able to tolerate staying in the mat. So anyway, so Gaur Krishna came and checked on Tirtha Maharaj and he saw he's reading this book of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He went back and reported to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj sent him back to say, why are you sitting in your room reading a book? You have some service in the printing press. So in the course of doing your service with the publishing, Tirtha Maharaj, he's very scholarly. So he's, very good at, editing, writing, all these things. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, in the course of your work in the printing, then you can read. But to go separately to read something, no, that is deviating from the service current. So that was Srila Sridhar Maharaj's standard. And he was actually very, quite serious about that. And in fact, he, at one time, he parted ways with another godbrother who had, at one time, before Srila Sridhar Maharaj started our mat, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati mat, he was acting as something like the president or he had one of his godbrothers requested him to take some leading position in his mat. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj did that for some time, but they actually parted ways on this particular point because Srila Sridhar Maharaj requested that the devotees would follow this standard in the mat, where they would only go to read and hear as part of the class. He didn't like that devotees would independently go and be reading books. And he actually left that temple because his godbrother wouldn't agree with him. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, this is, you're asking me to act as a president or whatever, but you're not honoring what, my own vision for the running of the temple. So what can I do, So he ended up leaving. And then sometime after that, he started our mat. So he was quite, serious about this point. So again, as I said at the beginning, this isn't something that we necessarily apply in our own practicing lives because, we're not living in that same environment. And Gurudev did encourage the devotees to read the books, but this principle we can take, that our reading has to be done in the spirit of service. So I would say, that our reading should be done with some care, and, it should be done in a mood of humble service. And, we want to see the book as a deity, actually. It's just like, we may go in front of the deity. This same principle, it applies to every aspect of our practicing life. If we take the example also of going before a deity, we can either objectify the deity and see how pleasing the deity is to our vision, or we can stand before the deity, you know, in the mood of receiving darshan and praying to be seen. You know, we want to put the deity in the position of the subject, and we are the object, the vision of that deity. I cannot see you with my fleshy eyes. You, please, you see me. You know, this applies everywhere, you know, across the board in Krishna consciousness. So also with reading, you know, in the mat, actually, before they would go to read the book, they would offer incense, you know, the praying, because the book is not just dead letters, but the book is conscious substance. It's passive, but it is conscious divine substance. So we can pray to that book, you please reveal yourself to me. You know? And another thing we can say is that, you know, reading in a regular way, and you know, not what I mean, like not like in a haphazard way, but if we have like some regular practice, that will also help. Then we're not imposing our own minds upon that book, you know, like for example, Gurudev once, he mentioned how it was very good to, he liked that the devotees would read the introduction, you know, like sit down and read properly, you know, not jumping here and there, and, you know, but, you know, read it properly, you know, not in a careless. And once he was saying how, how, you know, sometimes devotees, they're reading, and then they're, you know, they have all these other things going on. They have some prasadam, and you know, and the things are, you know, it's like it's happening in a kind of higgledy-piggledy way, you know, it's not focused, you know. And actually, you know, one of the impressions of Gurudev, which I will never forget, you know, and you know, I think this is a good example too of how the great souls, they have this quality that even the smallest incidents, the smallest, you know, instances with them, they have such a weight to them. But this is one of the like, you know, incidents that I witnessed with Gurudev. I cannot forget it, and it was so insignificant, but it was just one day I was there, and in his room, and he had like some stack of books, you know, Bhagavad Gita, I think, was there, and a few others, and he went in with his hands and straightened them, you know, and it was with such care, you know, it was like there was such a depth to that tiny little movement of his, you know, it was like he was expressing this deep regard, you know, for these holy books, you know. It was like this tiny, was a split-second thing, but it made this deep impression on me, you know how much honor, and I compared that, you know, to what I might do. If I look on my desk in front of me now, I feel ashamed. I've got all these holy books here, and a pile of oranges and all kinds of stuff. And you know, I see with others, but I always remember that with Gurudev, like it was like a deity, you know. So, you know, we want to approach our reading in that kind of way, you know. We're not coming to impose our own mental system on this book, but this book is actually higher than what my brain can comprehend. This is a deity, and I'm praying that, you know, that this deity may reveal something to me, you know, if they so please. You know, we want to approach with that type of spirit. And this is another interesting point that Sridhar Maharaj made once, that he was discussing this point about how every service, every devotional activity that we carry out, we must do so in the mood, in the spirit that the beneficiary is Guru and Gauranga. And then he specifically said, even our hearing of the class, we must consider, I am not the beneficiary of this. You know, it's quite a, you know, it's quite a, you know, it's a curious thing to say, you know, it's not how we normally think, you know, in our worldly transactions, even on that level, even our hearing, you know. So we are going to hear the class or we're going to read the book, and we will consciously think before, you know, whatever benefit comes from this, whatever I gain from this, it's not for me, you know. I'm even this subtle transaction, I'm offering that, you know, this is, you know, again, the sevan mukata, you know. I'm sorry, am I crackling up? I'm getting a notice that my internet is not so good. I will change my connection.
No, it is good now, but
It's so
just for a moment. Sort of.
I see. Yeah, it comes and goes. Okay, I'll just switch here. I'm gonna switch. So, you know, before we go to read, we can also make that kind of prayer. Okay, I'm just switching now. So this should be a little, okay, this should be a little steadier. So before we read, we can also make that kind of prayer, you know, that I'm not, you know, and I'm just remembering more now that particular talk, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj was saying, you know, that, you know, we may go to the class and think, oh, I will learn so many things, and then I will increase my knowledge, and then I can, you know, show people how much I know, you know. Or I may go to the class thinking this will give me some good punya, you know, some, you know, good pious credits, and then I can, you know, improve my situation in the world, you know. So, you know, when we go to read the book, we can go with that kind of prayer, you know, that I'm not approaching this for my own knowledge, my own arrogance, or whatever, for my own gain in any way, but I'm trying to become a better servant, you know. I'm doing this to please my Gurudev, you know. My Gurudev encouraged us to read the books, and on one occasion, you know, he was lamenting, actually, that I heard him expressing, like, nobody's reading the books, you know. He was sad about that once, you know. So he definitely wanted the devotees to take that time out, you know, but yes, it must be done in the proper mentality. And in it, you know, it's interesting, but in Bhakti, it's mentioned, I'm trying to think where, I think it's mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, that, you know, for Bhakti to be Bhakti, then the offering must be done before you perform the activity. If you know, like if you're, for example, cooking is a good example, you know, before you start the cooking, you know, even first when you're buying the ingredients, you know, you have to consciously think this is all an offering, you know, every step, a lot, not like you just, you know, you're thinking about a million things and carrying out the activity, and then afterwards, you know, you offer it. That won't count as bhakti. Some degree, of course, but it's not pure bhakti. So in, you know, genuine, you know, pure bhakti, it has to be beginning, middle, and end. There's a spirit of offering. So before we go to read, and I think like if we have some regular schedule, here's Govinda Nandini also joining us. So, you know, I think that also will help, you know, like if we have some regular schedule of reading, you know, like every day at this time, you know, we are, that helps to increase the mood of service, I think. Not like in a whimsical way, you know, but we're doing this as a service. And sometimes we feel like it, sometimes we don't feel like it, but we're doing this as a service to our Gurudev. You know? Gurudev mentioned once, if everyone will read one chapter of Bhagavad Gita every day, it will be very good. So if we're doing in that spirit, like Gurudev wanted me to read one chapter of Bhagavad Gita every day, like it's an offering to him, Gurudev, wanted us to read Sharanagati, or Gurudev wanted us to read Brahma Samhita. So I'm doing this in a mood of service, and then we're trying to do that in a regulated way. I think that will help, that will help to increase that mood of service within us. And yes, that caution, that caution should be there. But it is a tricky thing, it is a tricky thing, because Gyan, that spirit of knowledge it's very subtle, it can be very insidious. It's a tricky thing, and we have to guard ourselves. We have to guard ourselves. And to a certain degree, it's also not something we can completely avoid. It has its place, and it's not that we are told to neglect, completely reject, that tendency. We are encouraged to develop our understanding, but it has to be on the foundation of the mood of service, that is all. Like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he harmonized this so nicely with what he told Janardhan Maharaj, that bhakti is the king and Gyan is the minister. Knowledge is the minister to the king. So as long as we keep things that way, that way up, then we're okay. But if we let the Gyan get the upper hands, then we're in trouble, So we have to, it's something that we have to watch actually within ourselves. Keep ourselves on the right track. Maybe we'll go off sometimes, bring ourselves back. And if we are sincere, then Krishna will help us, Gurudev will help us. The environment will help us. Of course, we will go off track sometimes. That's normal and necessary, actually, as a part of our learning and cleansing. But if we are sincere, then we will get back on the right track again. I feel like there's a lot more I want to say on this subject, that it's not in my mind right now. But it's a big topic. But yes, it can be a dangerous path. Alpa vidya bhayam kodi, it's a Bengali expression Gurudev made once. A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. And I heard on, it was one recording, I think with Gurudev, somebody mentioned that all of the big Sanskrit scholars that were originally in ISKCON, they all went their own directions, later. They became under Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, they became very qualified, they became great scholars, and then they thought they knew more than everyone else, and they went their own way, they went in some other way. I heard and we've also seen that as well. I think most of us, we've seen that. The world of the intellect, it's easy to get lost there. I heard Srila Sridhar Maharaj in one recording, he made this statement and it just rang so true. He said that if the intellect, and I've witnessed this before too, that if the intellect is not grounded by love, then it can actually lead to madness, Too much brain, it can lead to madness, We have this expression in English, a mad genius, right? A mad genius. But, we've all seen that, I think, persons whose their mental system or the intellect, it's so active that it can take you away, you know, you can become mad with that. And so that comment of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I found it very profound, you know, that if the intellect is not tempered by love, because love is something deeper, then it can lead to madness, you know, on its own. Gurudev, he would many times, I would say it's something he often referenced. He spoke about these three faculties of the soul, of willing, feeling, and thinking. Willing, feeling, and thinking. And he said that, you know, willing can fly, you know, as in it's not stable. You know, in other words, willing, that the will, the ego to do, to assert, to be active, to achieve. He said that can fly. No, it's not stable. And then he said thinking can also fly. You know, the mental, the intellectual plane. It's also not a stable plane. And he said, but feeling is steady. You know, the heart. You know, the attachment of the heart. You know, that is steady. And that is the spirit of dedication, you know, love. That can also save us, you know, that, you know, what is it that our Krishna consciousness is based on? What is it inspired by? What's our fundamental, like, root here, or anchor? What's our fundamental anchor? Is it like a curiosity for us, you know? Or is it that we want to achieve something, do something? Or do we feel some real heart pull, you know, and some heart bond, you know, especially with the Vaishnavas, you know, with the devotees, with Guru? No, that is something that will keep us going. That's something that's sustainable, we can say. That's sustainable. Because that's another thing, you know, that if our approach is based on these other tendencies, you know, of the intellect or the ego, that burns out eventually. And we've seen that, right? You know, it's almost like, you know, an old story, a cliche, you know, we've seen that, you know. You know, we see sometimes, you know, persons come and they show themselves to be very prominent in different ways, but it fizzles out eventually because, you know, sooner or later, you know, because it's not sustainable, because it's abnormal, actually. It's not in consonance with the real mood, nature of the soul, of our inherent being. But love, you know, even if our love is faulty, even if our love is mixed, you know, still that's closer to the real mode of the soul, you know. So if everything that we do in Krishna consciousness is grounded on that, some feeling of affection for Guru and Vaishnava, affection for these beautiful teachings, you know, that will keep us safe. You know, we can get through everything if we have that, you know. Govindranandini's joined us. Dandavat. And we have Jim, Dr. Jim with us. Dandavat also. Happy to have you all with us. Do you want to add anything to that, Rasaraj Prabhu?
Well, I remember that Janardhan Maharaj was talking about that issue, is that, I will not say the name, but it was a sannyasi said he had too much knowledge that he thinks that he's better than his own guru. So, and I saw those things happen. Sometimes they accumulate like knowledge, but they use it only to get some position in a community, but no, they don't develop that kind of affection or love that it should be the end of the devotion, not just knowledge. And well, that happens to me. I started to read books from many years ago, first from Srila Prabhupada, that was in the 1980s or 1970 something. But every time I read a book 2, 3, 4 times, I see that always something new. It's something alive. I don't see that it's only like letters in a paper. It's like association with a genuine devotee. And when I start to read the book, sometimes I find things new that didn't see it before, even read it so many times. And it's like a kind of a happiness I feel. And sometimes I wanted to share with other devotees, but knowing the idea or I know something that you don't know, nothing like that. But to see something that is so sweet that I find and I wanted to share other devotees too. And that's what my way to approach those books is like get association of Srila Govinda Maharaj, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, or Srila Acharya Maharaj, is to get that association through those books. And I always see something new, something sweet, and I try in my best to apply in my life and try to share to others. But I try to avoid to use that as I know more than you, or I can do like a preaching or something like that to get some position for myself, but just to share something that is nice. That's what I try to say. But it's very nice what you explain. Actually, that is the real idea, no? That we should approach the books like a deity, or like the same guru is approaching me in the form of a book, and with very respectfully and reading, like you say, don't jump from one page to another, but reading steadily, you know, like, and that's the way that I think that we can get the best result of reading. Dandavats.
And that was so nice. I like your answer much better than mine. I feel like I was waffling. That's perfect, actually. I feel like that's the real essence, what you said. That's so nice. I'm going to think about that. That, yes, you're right. We're getting association, you know. Gurudev would often say, you know, if you don't have association of devotees physically, get association from the book. So perfect. Yes, we are getting association. We can think in that way, you know, not that we're going to study something or, you know, but we are going to get association of our gurus. And I also like the other point, you know, that, you know, when we're telling others, you know, what we read, then in that spirit of sharing, you know, not dominating or I know more, but that's very, very nice. You know. That is the real mood. You know, Gurudev would say, you know, like if you're tasting something nice, then you naturally want to share that with others. You know, that is, he said, that is Krishna consciousness. You know, you're tasting, what was it exactly? What maybe he said, like eating a very nice apple and you want to share with others. You know, that is Krishna consciousness. You know, that's the real, the real transaction. Oh, and you also reminded me of something very, very nice. I'm glad I remember this. Madhusudana Maharaj told me this a few years ago, that somebody asked Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I think what it was is that they were coming every year for Srila Sridhar Maharaj's Vyasa Puja in Navadvip. And then they asked Srila Sridhar Maharaj one year, you know, every year we're coming and we're, you know, making this offering to you. And we want to know, like, how can we be sure that what we're doing is real? You know, like there's actually some substance in what we're doing. Like you know, like every day we chant our rounds, every day we put on tilak, every day we chant Gayatri, every day we make an offering, right, etc. We're doing these regular things, like, so how can we be sure it's not just a ritual, but it's something substantial? And Srila Sridhar said that you can be sure if you always feel that it's fresh, you know. And he mentioned one example he mentioned was you know, you may explain this famous Bhagavad Gita verse, right? Sarva dharmam prityaja mamayekam sha. This is the most famous verse in Bhagavad Gita, at least in the Krishna consciousness movement. You know, so this verse, you may explain it so many times, but every time you will get something fresh. It will not be like some stale thing you're repeating like a parrot, but every time you will feel something new, you know, or you'll get some new inspiration about it. And maybe there was another example he gave, but I can't remember. But when what you said is exactly that, you know, that you said, you know, you've been reading for so long, you know, maybe 30, 40 years, but you're still getting something new, something fresh, you know. That's beautiful. That's evidence that you're connected to the current, you know. So very, very nice points. Thank you so much, Rasan. Very, very nice.
Actually, I want to add something to that. I remember in these days I was listening to Ashram Maharaj, and he says something that actually is very deep. He say, every day we eat breakfast in the morning, but every day we enjoy that breakfast. So it's like fresh, it's like new. It's not like the same thing again and again. We always enjoy it, even when we eat every day. So that is the same idea, no? With the reading, even the same book, but it's something fresh again.
Yes, nice example, very nice.
Hare Krishna, Didi, may I add one more thing to the
Yes,
conversation?
please, Nahush.
Some disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they told me that Srila Prabhupada also wanted us to write our realizations, maybe even if it's like one line for the day or something like that, because then writing our realizations helps crystallize or, you know, strengthen our incremental progress in devotional life, especially in the beginning. And so I wanted to add that, and because if you want to write something, then it'll also encourage us to read the books, and I just wanted to add that as a point to the whole conversation.
Very nice, Nahush. Thank you. Yes, Shravan and Kirtan. That is also an expression of Kirtan. And that, you know, that can also you know, sharpen our hearing too, you know. I think you said that, you know. Yes, very nice. Gurudev mentioned actually that he, you know, he would, if he heard something very special, he would make a note of it, you know. I heard him mention that once. So Srila Maharaj had said something very striking, and Gurudev made a note of it in his notebook, you know. So yes. Jim, please.
You mentioned earlier, if we can't have the personal association, then of course take the association through the books. And when you said that, I had this vivid memory. When I first started chanting and reading Prabhupada's books in the 90s, I had a vivid dream that I walked into what looked like a fraternity house with the big columns out in front and big doors that opened up into a foyer that went in, and there was a bookshelf, a library on the left. And it was all of Prabhupada's books that he had published on this shelf. And right around the corner from the shelf was a big living room where Prabhupada was sitting, talking to about 30 devotees.
Wow.
And they were all in there listening to him. And I remember moving in the dream, I was moving back and forth from looking at him and the devotees and hearing the darshan, and then looking at the books on the bookshelf, and then looking again at him, and then looking back at the books. And in the dream, the realization was that they're absolutely one and the same. There was no difference between what was in those books and what he was talking about and who he was as a personality, that they were all on the absolute plane. I woke up and I was like, whoa, it was just really cool. Like to realize that I had found the pure thing, that I had finally found, because I followed Ram Dass, Richard Alpert earlier, and he helped me come to Prabhupada. But when I found Prabhupada, I found someone I knew I could fully give myself to with no concern of being cheated at all. That this was someone who was absolutely sincere and the real deal. And in that dream, it was like, it was so strong that they were all one and the same. What he was saying, who he was, and what was in the books were all like, all three of them were one, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. And it was just like, it was unequivocal. It was such a powerful dream. I'll never forget it.
Wow, it sounds
So
like
that
you
was-
received real darshan there. Amazing.
I was very fortunate to associate with several of his original devotees who absolutely just adored him, and male and female. They just loved him so much because he loved them. They said they had this phrase: he didn't love to manage us, but he managed to love us.
Wait, sorry, can you
So-
say that again?
He did not love to manage us. He managed to love us.
Uh-huh. That was an expression you heard when you joined.
Yeah, they would say
Mhm.
that.
Uh-huh.
That was kind of the motto of, and the interesting quality is, in our karmi life, we say, oh, I love you to people. We say, I love you. And I still say it to people. I love you. Oh, I love you back, blah, blah, blah. They said they never heard him say, I love you to anyone. He never said, I love you, but they said his love for them was so undeniable, more than any love they had ever experienced from any amount of someone saying I love yous. He didn't have to say it because he just automatically, intrinsically, inherently loved them because he loved Krishna. So, and yet he would say, I have no love for Krishna. He would never say he had any love for Krishna. But I mean, how often in history does a personality come along? And Sridhar is another one, and Govinda Maharaj is another one, and all of them in this line. How fortunate we are to be drinking water from the headwaters of the Ganges, from Gangotri. It's just shooting out of the glacier from these personalities. Like we're right up at the headwaters. And Saraswati Goswami, Bhakti Siddhanta. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. So anyway, I mean, I get swept away when I start talking about this. But and you too, you have that same current flowing through you, the sincerity, the humility, and you just keep chuckling all the time. You're laughing. So there's this ananda, the sweet ananda, the blissfulness of Krishna. I love that. Some preachers are very stoic and stern and very serious, but you have this ebullient. Anyway, it's very very nourishing.
It's
It's
because
I
I'm
really
in such
appreciate
good company here.
this.
I know,
And
really. I was
Chintamani
just
Devi Dasi.
as you were Jim, you were talking, and I'm looking at the devotees who have their cameras on. Everyone's got these huge smiles on their faces, and I mean, you're inspiring everyone. I was thinking, wow, what a beautiful
I've been
group we have here.
It's a wonderful group. It's absolutely wonderful group. We used to say we've been infected with the K virus, Krishna virus. what are the symptoms of the K virus? Oh, there's uncontrollable outbursts of joy.
I was thinking of one comment Gurudev made once, and I think it was when he was visiting Russia, but it may have been somewhere else. And he said, you know, I'm looking at all of these bright devotees here or something like that. And he said, and I'm thinking, am I in Russia or am I in Goloka Vrindavan? You know, and I was looking at all of these beautiful faces here. Everyone's looking so inspired and happy. And I'm like, wow, we are all like, we are very humble practitioners, but still, any touch of the infinite, it is also infinite. So if some touch of real Krishna consciousness is descending into our little meeting, that's something that's of an absolute nature. That is perfect, that is something fully perfect, I feel that in our group here today.
Yeah,
We're very
it's really nice. It's very, very nice. And I just am very grateful that Chintamani connected me to your group.
We're so grateful to Chintamani. She connects such wonderful people, wonderful
she's a great
speakers.
Yeah, she's a great devotee.
Yeah, and Chintamani, she's our host today also, and special thanks for hosting.
Lazy host.
Always on. She's always there, Actually, Chintamani doesn't even sleep, She's just anytime you need her, because Brajamohini messaged me. Oh, I'm sorry. Brajamohini messaged me like just 30 minutes before the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do the hosting. And so then I messaged Chintamani, are you free? And within like 30 seconds, she's like, yeah, I'm available.
Because I'm a loser, just on my phone, wasting my life.
No.
So just waiting for the Vaishnavas to engage me.
Well, it's been a really, really beautiful meeting. Wow, very inspired and really nice input, especially from Rasaraj Prabhu and also Jim, our friend here. So our gratitude. And I know Nahush had another question too. Is it okay if we wait till next week, or is it something brief you'd rather we address today, Nahush? What do you think?
No, that was actually my comment was my question, so I was able to answer it.
Okay,
address
it was interwoven there. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
That's a good sign when everything is connected. Or it means we're connected to the pulse. Good sign. All right, well, maybe we'll stop there for today. Any last shares from anyone?
I'd like to invite everybody here in this meeting for tomorrow's meeting. The group study of Sri Sri Prapana Jivanamritam. So we would be very happy to have you, Rasaraja Prabhu, Sevarupa, Didi, and Jim also there with us tomorrow. And also the other Nahush and Tungarasa, she's always there. Chintamani, Bhakta Kori, Pradeep.
We have speaking of reading, we're going through Prapana Jivanamrita. For those of you who don't know, it's a very special composition of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. It's a collection of many verses in the scriptures on the topic of Sharanagati, surrender. And he's collected many of these verses and also included his own special insight, drawing out the essence of these verses. So we have a Wednesday meeting when we go through that. So everyone's certainly welcome. Okay, well, our gratitude again to all of you for giving your good association. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Das Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai, all the assembled devotees ki Jai, the world devotees ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.